So, for those of you who don't know what AgilePoint is about, this is a great opportunity to talk a little bit about our roadmap and the future state of our product offering. As many of you may or may not have seen, the BPM world is recently going through some evolutions or changes where traditional business process management solutions such as Appian, K2, IBM Lombardi really have nowhere to go in terms of development in their roadmap. They've at this point integrated a lot of the major components that you would expect for an IBPMS suite. AgilePoint has decided to take a unique approach to dealing with this market circumstance and trying to develop what we like to call a rapid application or rapid application composition or development framework. So what you're seeing here is an example of our entire application placed inside Salesforce. So you'll notice that this is the normal Salesforce toolbar at the top, but inside I have exposed an entire set of application building functionality inside this portal. Now I'm going to switch over to the second screen. And this is the portal in its native resolution, in its native non-wrapped format. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of interesting key points. So in addition to being a rapid application development platform, we will allow individuals to use our technology to create process templates and mobile-enabled applications, which we'll then offer for sale, or offer for resale rather, on our store. So if individuals have expertise in a particular domain or addressing a particular business problem, they'll be able to create their own applications and publish them for reuse by others. In our existing product, we have HTML5 based portal, which allows for us to display and interact with a variety of processes and tasks. So you'll notice in this particular diagram, I've got all of my process templates lined up here, and as I drill into a process template, I can actually see exactly what tasks are associated with that graph on the bar. I can then drill in to see exactly where I am at and what step I'm at in this process. So you'll notice here, the active step is the manager approval, and when I click on it, I'm able to get exactly who it's assigned to, how long it's been assigned, and whether or not the task is overdue. Okay? Now let me show you how we can build an application that does something very similar to this. And the application that I'm talking about in this instance is a simple budget request process. Almost every organization in the world has got a budget request or some sort of a request for expenditure. In this instance, you can see this is an HTML5 based form. If I change the resolution of the screen, it will adapt to continue to meet the needs of that particular browser. Okay? If I submit this form here, form has been completely submitted, and now I can go in and actually look at that task I've started. Okay? So in addition to providing the ability to do workflow management, you can actually now build an entire application using what we call our app builder. Okay, I'm going to spend most of the rest of the session talking about App Builder. This product will be live at the end of December. And January 1st, this is going to be offered as a cloud-based offering starting at $19 per user per month. So we are hoping to allow individuals to do custom application development in the cloud. Right now, a lot of companies do infrastructure platform as a service. There are companies like Salesforce, who's been extremely successful using software as a service as their business model. However, if you want a custom application, if you want to build a custom application, but you don't want to have to know how to code it, you can use AgilePoint to rapidly enable any process-driven application. So here's an example of a process flow. I'm just going to move my toolbar out of the way. And you can see that when I go out here into my set of stencils, we support a wide variety of stencils, including Salesforce, SharePoint, integration with web services, and database services. Now, under Salesforce, if, for example, I wanted to integrate or update an entity in Salesforce, our tool is set up to just drag and drop that shape out to the process designer. As I drop it, it's already wired it up and it's configured. So now all I've got to do is set the tokens, the connection information. I can do that as simply as just selecting what Salesforce endpoint I want, and then any of the entities available to me within Salesforce become apparent. So if I, for example, want to update the opportunity entity, okay, I simply come down here and select opportunity, and then it's just a mapping exercise. On the left-hand side of the screen, you will see I've got all of the data coming from my form, which I created using no code, or my workflow. So if I have systems that I've integrated with that I need to bring that data either from the cloud or on-premise back to my workflow solution, I simply grab the item here, drag it over, drop it. It is now mapped and configured. Okay? And that's the API side where we're making the call to Salesforce. Same exact process except reversed for the response from Salesforce. Okay? So you can see that item's already been wired up in my diagram. And if I want to now, I can edit the form associated with this process by just clicking on Edit Agile Form. Now this forms designer is using HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript. You'll see on the side here I've got 3 sets of standard stencil tools available to me. So I've got standard fields. This would be check boxes, drop downs, combo boxes, list boxes, etc. I've got this nice little grouping panel which will allow us to do subforms as well. So I can drag and drop that item onto the screen. It asks me for configuration on it. Don't have to provide any for this particular one. And then I can just start dropping items inside of it. Now we also have the ability to clone that object. So if I want to make a duplicate, and I'm just going to move my submit button down to the bottom. Now you'll notice that I have the ability to change the theme on this form. Okay. Again, you notice in just a couple clicks I was able to completely change the form and add additional controls. Here I'm able to change the look and feel from like orange to green. I'm also able to override any of the default behavior in the form using CSS or JavaScript if you want to code. Okay? If you don't want to code, most of the controls on the standard fields, advanced fields, and even the subset of Telerik HTML5 controls have been implemented in such a fashion where you don't need to know how to code to use them. So here I can grab my Kendo Data UI grid and simply add it to the top of the page. Okay? Now this is bound to a data set, and right now I don't have any data sets created. However, you'll see the control is already present. So when I go to my PC browser view, there's my Kendo data grid. And as soon as I give it a data set, it'll start populating the data. And I added that in a couple of clicks. Now, if I want to know what that data grid's going to look like, say, for example, I'm on a tablet and I'm in a portrait orientation on a tablet, you'll notice it's all scrunched out up here. Even if I spread this out, it may not be enough space for me to use that data grid completely. So now I can create a custom version of the view for this particular mobile device for this orientation simply by adding or removing fields to this grid layout itself. So I'm going to spread my spacer out, spread my request details header out, and now I can do things like grab the requester email, put it up here next to requester name, amount, date needed, and there's my cloned list box at the bottom. I have effectively modified or customized this version of the form so it'll display in this correct format for this orientation. So now when I go to view this, if I look at the tablet portrait view, this is what it's going to look like. And that customization was all done without using code. Okay? So that's the power of our new forms technology, is being able to rapidly create an application using a front-end form and all of these advanced controls, and then connecting that via integrations and workflow components with a process model. Now in this instance, you can see I've got a simple budget request. It's going to retrieve data from a system database, determining whether or not that budgeted or requested amount is available inside the budget. If the amount is greater than $25,000, I'm going to update Salesforce and then send it to the CFO for approval. If it's under $25,000, I can route it directly to the manager for approval. And once I have their approval, the process will stop. Okay? And in this instance, what I'm going to do is just go into the manager approval form, which looks identical to the budget request form, but it's got a couple additional approval controls. And from here, we can actually begin to add logic to the form itself. So if I want to, for example, have a display condition or have a piece of JavaScript run when I load the form, or show or hide controls based on logic or drop-downs or selections within the form itself, it's just a matter of dragging and dropping the configuration for this. So for example, if I say, if department is present or is equal to operations, then I want to hide the control for the department name. Okay? And I have the ability to trigger this event on form load, on submit, on submitting of URL, or on any of the other additional actions or events that occur within the form. Okay? So now, instead of having to, if you need an HTML5 enabled application that's going to look the same on your iPad, your iPhone, or on a desktop browser, be fully functional and be sure of that, you can either hire a staff of HTML5 developers, or you can use AgilePoint. Now, once you've built the application and published it, it becomes available to anyone on the World Wide Web. And this gives you the ability to create an application in a matter of hours, if not days, instead of spending weeks or months doing development. Okay, so I'm going to connect my iPad right now. I'm not going to connect to my iPad right now. It's not connected to the same network segment. So, but my iOS app, I can bring the iOS app up and show it to you guys on the iPad itself. So this is an example of our dashboard portal. And this will allow you to interact with tasks, submit tasks, approve tasks. Now, one of the new features that we've got enabled in the dashboard is the ability to actually do email approval, which doesn't require the portal. It actually will work through any email-enabled device. And the nice part about that is an executive can simply hit reply, type approved, and send that email, and we'll trap that event and actually process that through the workflow, incrementing the workflow, capturing the approval data for audit history. That same capability of process enablement is also available for Link, Chatter, Yammer, SMS text messaging, as well as we're working on additional cloud-based integrations for companies like Box.com, Google Drive, etc. So there's a variety of integrations available to us, and we have the ability to create additional integrations as needed. So if you have a particular custom integration that you need done, we can certainly do that. As you can see here, we've got quite an extensive Sharepoint Stencil list. That Sharepoint instance can be either on-site or in the cloud, doesn't matter. Database services, we support SQL Server, Oracle, and we have MySQL Server support available at the end of Thanksgiving. Again, it's really easy to use any of these stencils or shapes. It's just a matter of dragging them out, dropping them on the page, and configuring them. And then as soon as this process is published, you'll be able to access it from anywhere on the web. Now, one additional thing I wanted to show everyone is that our new Enterprise Manager feature gives you the ability to control process behavior at runtime. What do I mean by this? Process is great if you create a process. Problem is that things change in business. And when things change, if you can't get your systems updated quickly to respond to those changes, they quickly become antiquated. And as a result, you incur a lot of technical debt. Using our HTML5 technology and our unique process-based web engine, you'll see here this is a responsive HTML5 web page that will resize dynamically based on how much space I give it inside the browser. The same behavior will be exhibited on the iPad, iPhone, Android phone, or Windows phone. Okay. One of the things I can do is come in here to runtime management, and I can manage active process instances. So I've got a process running. How do I modify it? Okay, someone's come to me and said, well, in this example, the standard workflow won't work. We need to change it. Okay, so how do I do that for an in-flight process? If I've done code generation or if I've done any sort of storing of the process information in memory and that server goes down, I now have an orphan process. In this example, you can see my active process is sitting here on manager approval. Let's say I want to change the workflow for this. So I'm just going to click the change flow button. I'm going to select the item I'm on and say, you know what, in this instance, it needs to go to the CFO. I don't care if it was under the $25,000 amount or not. When I click apply, you can see the task has now been reassigned to the CFO dynamically. Now let's say I want to split that task. I'm going to apply that. If I wanted to split that task, I could actually create a split or a merge scenario where the task could go from being a single person, assigned to a single person, to assigned to multiple people, or merge it back to being assigned to a single person. So this gives you real-time adaptive capabilities in terms of managing your workflow or your process instances. No longer are you limited to just having a static workflow and then having to worry about, well, what happens when an individual leaves the company or if there's a departmental reorganization? How does that impact my existing systems? Here it's just a matter of changing the stencil, republishing it, and you're done. So that kind of gives you an idea of how easy it is to use our runtime process adaptation and management. We provide a lot of server statistics. This is a multi-tenant environment, so some of our system integrators and partners actually want to resell this solution to other individuals. So what they've done is they've worked with us to provide either a cloud-based or an on-premise installation that they themselves control and administer. And what they're able to do is create applications in a fraction of the time and continue to service their clients to get projects done that they may have challenges getting budgets approved for using traditional development methodologies. So I actually came from an oil and gas company before I joined AgilePoint, and I purchased AgilePoint when I was working for that company. Part of the reason I felt like AgilePoint was the right solution for me was not just the product roadmap, but also the underlying architecture. Okay? And that's one of the nice things about working for AgilePoint is we have an enterprise class architecture that is really scalable and extensible and can be leveraged by companies as small as a small consultancy with maybe 5 to 10 people in it, or as large as some of the biggest multinational names that you'll hear. For example, L'Oreal is a global client of ours. We do business with them in at least 3 different regions. Walmart.com has got AgilePoint, is using AgilePoint. Corning Glass. So everyone who's got a smartphone, if you're Gorilla Glass, believe it or not, the requisition ordering process and how they got the materials and created that glass and how they shipped it was all managed by an AgilePoint workflow. Okay, so this is really the exciting part about our new technology is that we can now take any environment, whether this is a Salesforce portal or your local intranet portal or your company's public-facing website, and we can enable rapid application development and process-based applications through no-code solutions. Okay, so a fraction of the time it takes to develop these solutions, you can create an entire solution from scratch here. So if I wanted to do that, I can just come into my my design time environment. So I'm just going to go to my application builder, and I'm just going to create a new application. So in this instance, I'm just going to call it a time off request. And it's going to ask me what I want to name it and what kind of swim lanes I want. So I'm going to say horizontal, and I'm just going to click next. And I can bind it to any of these data sources. For right now, I'm just going to choose blank. I don't have any of those other endpoints configured. And this is going to start me off with a new process group, which will allow me to start designing my workflow and creating a form. So here you can see I've got a blank process design template. I'm just going to start by selecting an Agile form. So drag my form out here and drop it. It's going to ask me for a name. I'm just going to click next. And I'm going to add a new form. And we'll call it a blank form, blank data set. And here's the forms builder. So if any of you have experienced our product in the past, you may have noticed that our platform is built on top of Visio. In this new version, there is no requirement for Visio or any on-premise installation whatsoever. So I'm going to start this form build just by coming out here and asking for a label. So I'm just going to call this label time off request. And then I'm going to add a single line of text, requester name, and then I'm going to add a date time control and call this one start date. Now I've got this set up currently for a 3-column layout. I don't think I want to do that. I'm going to change it to a 1-column layout. There's my 1-column layout. Now I can change the theme and say let's go with the dark blue theme. And now I can preview that. And that's how it's going to look in the PC browser. This is how it's going to look on the iPhone in a portrait orientation. That form is ready to go. So I'm just going to save that. Go back to my process model. You can see it's already got the form embedded in the workflow. And now I can add a condition. So here's a single condition shape. I'm just going to drag and drop that. The nice part about our forms builder is all the process variables and form data are exposed in the UI. So you can see here I've got a start date and a requester name. I'm going to go ahead and grab requester name. Let me see, edit the rule, grab requester name, drop it. If the requester name contains Kyle, then I'm going to have a separate condition. So if the requester name contains Kyle, I'm going to go ahead and approve that step. If the requester name does not contain Kyle, it's going to route back to the submitter. So who needs a vacation? clearly I do. So here I'm just going to select my e-form. I'm going to start by saying add new form. And this is approval. Now we actually have the ability to copy the form that I just created, bring all those fields over. So I'm going to say existing form. Request submit is the form I just created. So this is going to bring all of the information from that other form over. So I don't have to go add all those fields. Really handy if you've got a nice long form, lots of fields on it. I'm sure developers don't like having to repeat things over and over again. So here, now I just want to make this read-only. Behavior, read-only. And I'm going to make this one read-only. Disabled. And now I'm going to add a yes/no button on the bottom here. So I can add a quick lookup list either from my database, Salesforce, or SharePoint. We also have the ability to integrate with SAP, NetSuite, via web services, or even with Dynamics CRM. In this instance, I think I'm going to go with an inline list. So option 1, its name is going to be approved. Okay, so now I've configured my approve reject condition. I want to add a comment box. So I'm just looking for a single line of text or a multi-line of text. And I'm just going to call this comments. And now that form is done. So I've saved the form. I'm going to go back to the process. Next. Finish. Now it's going to want me to set up a process participant here. It can be one or a variety of individuals. So I can assign it to an individual. I can assign it to a group. That group can be synchronized with Active Directory, SharePoint, or it can be an AgilePoint group. So any authentication story you want. Typically, we have a lot of clients who use Active Directory. As we move to the cloud, Active Directory Federation takes a lot of time and effort. Therefore, we've had individuals ask us to provide authentication sources like external databases, etc. And that gives you a quick idea of kind of how that would work. So in this instance, I'm going to send that. So this process is now wired up. It's ready to be published and ready to go. As soon as an individual goes to this link or goes to submit a time off request, they're going to be presented with a form which will look like exactly like the browsed version, the preview version of the form here. And then once it starts to route through and get approvals, get workflow, I track all that information in the Enterprise Manager. We're able to bring all of that together and provide you real-time dashboards, real-time reports for any of your process metrics. So everything from a simple, hey, HR needs to know, what everyone would like for their Christmas gift survey, to a complex, mission-critical, truly business-enabled process platform can be accomplished using both our new technology and our on-premise technology. And I know we're running out of time here. Does anyone have is there any questions I can answer? Does anyone have any feedback, concerns, comments? Go ahead. I'm sorry, I can barely, let me just step down here. So I'm sorry, what was that?
What about identity management? How users' authentication is working in that?
So those are great questions. So identity management depends upon the context in which you're using the system. So I showed you the Salesforce version of the portal. Okay. Here, identity management is going to be controlled by my Salesforce login. Okay. Now on the App Builder version of the portal, which is the version that we're now currently showing, you can see I've logged in as myself. So I'm a registered user of AgilePoint, and my username is Kyle. Okay, so we're maintaining an external authentication store for our publicly available cloud-based users of this. Well, it depends. So what if your process is a registration process or a process whereby you're asking the user to input a username and an email address? The process itself will capture that information and then it's just stored in the database for later use. Yeah, so for the approval process, you're right. The approval, and that's a very old kind of demo that we like to give is a time off request. Time off request works well when I'm using AD as an authentication store. You are correct. Okay, in this particular scenario, I would either have to know who my manager is, or I'd have to be able to put in the manager's username and email address. Now, keep in mind, any event, so you can see here I'm on collaboration, and I've got an email event here. This email could just as easily go to an external email address. So someone can be notified via email, via text message, via Yammer, Chatter, link, that there is some task or activity that they need to interact with, and then when they click on that link, they get rerouted to this portal. Okay? Does that make sense? Sort of. We do have an AgilePoint booth back in just to the right of the door. Feel free to come by. I'll be happy to talk through any of the technical details with you. I actually have some solutions consultants here with me today who are a little more technical than I am. But rest assured, if you're thinking about it in terms of an active process or project a challenge that you're facing right now, we'd be more than happy to talk to you about what that challenge is and what we can do to help. Okay? Any other questions? Thank you very much, everyone, for your time today. I appreciate it. And please feel free to come visit us at the AgilePoint booth.